And we're good. We're recording. All right, so we can get it kicked off. Thank you everyone for being here. Hey, Jay from Texas. Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Lauren. I'm the founder of SD Melanin and Crate Agency, and I'm really excited to host our second discussion, Equality by Design, for San Diego Design Week, to really take a look at race, access, and ownership in the design process, and take a different perspective on the design and what design looks like, particularly within the food and beverage industry, and the access within it. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to our amazing guests. I'll just quickly do a brief bio. It won't do them justice at all because they're all really dope people, but I'll take a stab. So I'll start with Chef Q. Chef Q is a professionally trained chef, originally from Louisiana, and is the co-owner and executive chef of Louisiana Purchase. So shout out to Chef Q. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I'm gonna head over to, oh, what you got there? Hey. Now, Miss Jocelyn Turner. Miss Jocelyn is like everything grown into one, like an entrepreneur, an advocate, and like, what do you need? She got you. She's an advocate, creative director, and CEO of The Right Juice and The Right Fit. So thank you so much for being here, Jocelyn.
Thank you for having me.
And last but certainly not least, we have Brandon Montgomery. He is a craft beer enthusiast. He's a certified beer judge, and he is also the founder and CEO of Black Beer Travelers. He can tell you a little bit more about that. I'll give him some space to tell you what that looks like, what that means, but all around dope individual and really innovator. So thank you for being here, Brandon.
Thank you.
Awesome. So what I want to do is first start off with a question for the audience. We've all been to a restaurant or a beer garden or a juicery. So in the chat box, I'd love for you all to tell me how you felt when you went somewhere and the moment you walked into that space, you thought, this was designed for me. Like, you can just drop a word in there. Were you pleased? Were you happy? Like, what did that feel like to be in a space that you thought, like, I love that, calm. I love, Sarah said calm, engaged. All right, we need some more responses, like exciting, at ease. I love that. So the purpose of this discussion is to talk about some of the challenges faced as Black founders and innovators and designers to creating and getting access to the opportunity to create something that feels calm, comfortable, impressed, easy, at ease, and relaxing. And then we're going to talk about how do we create more opportunities for that, and how do we bring more individuals into our fold, into the ecosystem that allows us, particularly as people of color, as Black entrepreneurs, to get access to more of those spaces and to bring more people in. All right, so we're gonna stop sharing the screen. It's gonna be all us. All right, so I hate saying panelists because this isn't really a panel, it's a discussion. So, friends, let's chat. You all are entrepreneurs. We all are entrepreneurs, and we're all in spaces, particularly within the food and beverage industry. So I would love to hear just some of your thoughts and your stories on challenges, inequitable challenges you face in this industry? Go for it. Anyone can.
Well, I think for me, being a newbie to the food and beverage industry, as a entrepreneur, has definitely opened my eyes up to opportunities for us, people of color, Black people. I own a mobile smoothie and juice truck, which is very rare here on the West Coast. Even when I was doing research and trying to find examples, mentors, or anybody that's out there doing it, I really only stumbled upon like one person. They were down south. And so I found, being from Southeast San Diego, you know, we're right on the border of Mexico, you know, heavy populated, obviously, with Black and brown individuals. And for us, you know, taco shops are a major thing for us. Liquor stores and, you know, fast foods. And so very far in between in our communities, do we have access to organic drinks? You know, most people go to the larger chain juiceries. One that's notable and most famous, do not have the freshest organic ingredients and are not serving us and thinking of us. And so for me, you know, with starting the right juice, I really thought it was important. And that's why my mission is blending health back into the community, because I don't claim to know it all. I don't know it all, and I'm learning on this journey, but I know that we deserve access to quality options in the food and beverage industry. And I think the one thing that we're missing is to be able to see others like us come into this industry and take off. And that's why I think mentorship is so important. I think it's so important to reach out to people who are already in this industry and doing it, because they can lead the way. You may or may not, you know, be met with people that may not want to share information, but having panels like this and having discussions and meeting people and talking and asking them about their journey, I think will help get us in the door.
Love that.
And feel, you know, that we can be part of this industry, especially in California, because when you think about food and beverage and you think about health and consciousness, that's not the first thing is not coming to mind, you know, the Black community. You know what I mean? That's not it. That's why they don't build Sprouts in our community. That's why they don't have, you know, those bigger chains. And so I just continue to learn that we deserve access, and the only way to do that is for us to create. And in order to create, you also have to research and see what's out there, see who's doing it. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can create your own wheel, but you can also partner. And partnerships are so important. And that's why I'm grateful for, you know, Chef Q, Louisiana Purchase, and other Black-owned eateries who've been able to partner with me, especially during this pandemic, to bring those options to the community, to be able to see, you know, two Black entrepreneurs coming together. And even though we serve, you know, different options, we complement each other, you know, and I think that that's what it's about.
I love that. I love so many things you just said. So like access, mentorship, partnership. That in my journey as an entrepreneur, that has been, that it's like you said, it's a struggle to sometimes find people who like look like you and are doing it. And sometimes you feel like, wow, is there a blueprint out there? So I really love that. And I would, like Chef Q, you have a whole restaurant.
Right.
And so I'd love to, like, that's a huge accomplishment. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too.
Yeah, well, like how I view things is kind of like a little bit differently. But me not being from like California and being from New Orleans is 65% Black. So mine was like the opposite of coming out here and not seeing so many Black people. And it's like just my thought of like, man, how can we get like more people like involved with different things, like what the culinary scene is like, what is some of the other scenes like, what do we have that, you know, that's for us? Because in New Orleans, like most of the stuff is for us. From the time you get off the plane, from the time you hit uptown, just like the portraits and the murals on the wall, everything is Black. Everything you could tell like this city is for us. And coming here and like my first day here, like I didn't see Black people really, and a lot of things were Spanish influenced, and you right, taco shops everywhere. So it was like different, but at the same time, I viewed it as like a challenge. Like challenge accepted. Like get more people involved, see more Black businesses thrive. Try to get as many like future culinary people and get them in my grasp. The first thing I did was hit Kitchens for Goods, which is a culinary program for kids and adults that aren't really doing well in life or need guidance. And I hit the program. We hired a bunch of kids from the program for different restaurants to kind of get those kids like, going in the right direction. Some misguided, some gang members, some, down and out on their luck, and I just like doing stuff like that because that's what we do like back home. I mean, back home, culinary is everything. That's like one of our main sources of income. So culinary is like hospitality period is big. I mean, I may work in a kitchen. I might be next to a dude that just came home from murder, and to the right of me with a dude that is just graduated from culinary school to the left of me. So like taking that aspect and then bringing it here and then have everybody come together as one, was the biggest goal of mine.
Love it. Brandon, you're in like this completely separate world. Not separate, but you're in the craft.
It's adjacent.
It's adjacent.
Yeah. Because I have the experiences that Q and Jocelyn have, but of course in the more adult beverage line. But like that's the entire idea behind like Black Beer Travelers is like showcasing the excellence of like Black people and diverse people in craft beer already there, but also introducing people to the flavors and the complexities and the experiences that they're unaware of. So it's like talking to people, understanding what their palate is, and really just giving them an opportunity to like pair something and learn about like the history that inspired the craft beverage that's in front of them. And like that's hard, especially being in such a largely Caucasian field, and then being like spread out across the U.S. and the world. So like one of the things I've ran into is like certain populations of like around the U.S. are more inclined to actually have experience with craft beer versus say San Diego. Like the Black population here doesn't really know too much about it, even though San Diego is known as the capital of craft. And so it's just like slowly like introducing that there's more quality beverage, just like Jocelyn speaks on, like quality adult beverages for them to enjoy, and an entire industry that already markets based of things that are considered Black in general, because Blackness is what's cool. Blackness is what a lot of these white brewery owners grew up with. And we already have a space and like an influence. We just don't have a voice. And that's what I'm trying to change. And it comes through like a lot of networking collaborations, bringing together those strong totem around the U.S. and the world, and letting people know that we exist. So yeah.
I love the idea of like making our voice louder, because what I see everyone, Brandon, Chef Q, and Jocelyn, what I see you all do very well is the collaboration to amplify your voices and like amplify your businesses as well. Would love to hear your thoughts on how do we make our voices louder? How do we build the impact? Because yeah, like we literally create the culture, like across so many like period. We literally create the culture, but oftentimes we have less ownership or less say in how that is used, or reaping the benefits that come from it in some ways. So we'll love to hear your thoughts, because I see you all individually do it really well. Collaborations and amplifying your voice so that you do showcase 2 Black-owned businesses, or you highlight other players in your industries who are really making a dope ass impact.
I think too, and Chef Q made a good point because, you know, when you go to New Orleans, when you go to Atlanta, when you go to Texas, all those places that I visited, you know, you see the culture, you see us. It's just, it's in the air. It's everything that's represented. And so in California, you know, we're in a big melting pot. However, there are Black people here, and there are Black dollars here that matter. You know, we find that there are a lot of, at least I find that there are a lot of African Americans, you know, in the community who have a skill, who can cook, who don't have access. You know, I do like the model Kitchen for Goods has, because, you know, they're right in Southeast San Diego. You know, I've sent a lot of kids over that I've worked with in the juvenile justice system to their program. I think that they definitely bring that access to our community for individuals who want to, you know, further themselves. And I keep taking it back to mentorship, and I keep taking it back to partnership, because it's important to network and learn and get to know people who are in the field, so that you can ask those questions. And I have to commend Chef Q for taking on that responsibility of, you know, partnering with them and getting those referrals and bringing those in, because that's huge. Because, you know, a lot of people don't have those opportunities sometimes, unless, you know, culinary, you know, or beverage industry is like your love. Sometimes it's just a job to get yourself through. You know what I mean? And so people are not falling in love with the craft and the passion in the industry like they would in other places of the world. And so I think that we have to continue to provide space for that, because ownership is really, really important. And we don't want our people to continue, at least I don't want them to continue selling dinners out their trunk, or dinners from their home.
Agreed.
That's a great start. I think it's important for us to lay down the foundation, so that it's intimidating, right? When I first got my food truck, I was like, I don't even know what I'm thinking. Like, why am I doing this? And even to this day, having it in a year, I'm like, you know, it's predominantly Mexicans who have food trucks, especially in San Diego. You know what I mean? And so while I feel like the brown community has been very helpful, it was hard to go to somebody who looked like me, who had a truck and was operating and knew the ins and outs. You know what I mean? And so I think, you know, providing those opportunities and people seeing you, I think that's what's going to kind of kickstart us to do that. But I think it also takes people to see, like, it's a lot in the industry, and especially I know in the food industry, because they have a high turnover, you know what I mean? And so people sometimes are intimidated by that work. And so I think that that's where it comes, because when you come to San Diego, you know, our big thing is we got Mexican food. We got the best Mexican food on the planet. Like, you know, that's all. And so it's very far in between. Do we have the same accolades? And we say the same thing about, you know, Black-owned eateries. Like, we have them, but Mexican food has always been overpowered by that. And so I think it's just important for people to see the work, because, you know, you can come to a Louisiana person and say, oh yeah, it's Black-owned, the food's amazing, blah, blah, blah. Like, I wish I could do something like that. But if you're not really in tune with the work that it takes for ownership, then, you know, you'll continue to kind of just be a fly by night and, you know, sell your dinners or your drinks or cocktails, right, you know, on the side.
Right. No, I agree with that.
I feel like one thing people don't always notice until you start a business is how hard it is to develop that infrastructure. Like the amount of capital you have to build and the connections you have to even get to a point where you can get out of selling it out of your house or out the trunk of your car. It's like, it's just ridiculously hard for those like of diverse backgrounds, especially Black people, to get that capital they need, because one, just working together, it's hard to fundraise when the majority of the people you know don't have that like generational wealth to just like spare. And then like, and a GoFundMe is only gonna go so far, because that like that covers like maybe the interest initial step and maybe some legal fees, because people forget how much it costs for these taxes, these contracts, like insurance.
Like in California, with an LLC, it's gonna cost you nearly $1,000.
Like $800 a year.
$800 for the cost of doing business. That excludes that's not the taxes on your business. That's not the fees to register, the annual fee. That's just, you want to do business in California, all the other fees you got before you make a single dollar, plus $800.
Yeah, and that's the thing about that. And for some reason, LLCs, especially during the pandemic, there's a misconception And I think that we also have to educate, and that goes back to, you know, knowledge, because a lot of people are misinformed about the steps and things that you need in order to start a business. And I tell people all the time, like, the LLC is not the first thing you have to get. It's a business license. And if you don't have any, you know, assets, then you don't have anything for anybody to come after you with anyway. And so I always tell people when they ask me about business and starting, I'm like, I don't know who told you guys an LLC. Like, I'm not saying don't get one, but that is not the thing you need to do in the first 90 days of business, especially in California. Unless you can pick up and keep up that $800 a year, then that's not something that you have to do, because really that's what's supposed to separate your personal and business. So if you ain't got no personal assets, nobody can't come for you anyway. You know what I mean? And so I think it goes back to education, because people are so misinformed about the steps they need to take. And even, like I said, with capital, a lot of times people are so worried about LLC, you should be worried about really your credit. Because if you want to obtain capital, because I'm moving into a space where I'm like, all right, God, you gave me this food truck. What's the next step? And I know that I need to be pretty good with business credit, which we don't talk about a lot in our community, and your personal credit, so that I can take the next step and can get a location and have access to, you know, that capital. And so it goes back to having, you know, informational panels like this, so that we learn and we teach, so that we have more information, you know, when we're trying to get into this industry.
Absolutely.
People also need to ask questions. I think, like, one of the biggest problems is a lot of people are scared to ask questions or intimidated to ask questions. And a lot of people feel like, I got it, or I know it, or, you know, so they don't want to, it's kind of like, I'm not here to be against you or fight against you. Like, if you want to know something, if you want to get somewhere, ask the questions, like, be involved, engage. Like, but I feel like that's also an issue that, you know, people come and be like, oh, I want to do X, Y, Z, but they don't know how to get there. But they're so like nonchalant about it, or I'm not going to even seek the help. And then they end up, you know, like, that's what we're here for. Like, nobody's here to bite your head off. Like, ask the question.
Well, Chef Q, I got some questions I got for you later on off the radar that I already been thinking about. So I'm just letting you know now that I got a whole bunch of questions for you for my next step in business. So FYI.
Right.
No problem.
So there's a question. You just a quick note. You all can also post your questions in the Q&A if you have a particular question. But there's some questions about resources for business and things like that. One thing that, to the point of asking questions and finding help. So there's this, we're here, right? So we're all entrepreneurs, we're all business owners. And so I don't mind if you reach out to me, and I'm sure the panelists wouldn't mind reaching out. But there's also like some dedicated resources that are free. Actually, SCORE, which is an organization up under the Small Business Administration. It's called SCORE.org, score.org. They are huge in like providing resources for small business owners. I literally had a conversation this morning with a SCORE mentor who's a lawyer. And I was just like, you know, I'm looking at some documents, and she's like, well, just send me over these documents. I'll review them for you. Like, that is huge. Like, legal fees are very high, very high.
I can also share, and I typically I bring them up a lot because Axion, they're located in the Jacobs Center office, and some years ago, a friend of mine told me about them, about getting like some small business loans, et cetera, from them. And I had ended up getting a small business loan from them just to get some capital for my inventory for the right fit. And, you know, 6 years later, I developed a relationship, you know, with them where they always use me for marketing stuff. I always check in with them. I have a very good relationship with the loan officer. And, you know, the one thing I like about Axion is that they are in the community. A lot of people don't know about them. And of course, their interest rates are a little bit higher than normally, but that's because they want to give us access and give us started. You know, you don't want to go into Axion like, I'm trying to get this $500,000 loan, right? But to get you started, Axion, ACCION. And they just have a wonderful platform, and they've been with me throughout. When I was able to get my juice truck, I actually funded about 80% of everything I needed to start with my truck. And a little bit that I had left, I was able to go to them and get that rest of that small little loan. And so I say that to say that they've able to build up my credit, to help me so that I can later on go to the banks and say, you know what, I have a history of paying off these business loans. Now I need a couple $100K, you know, to do my next step. And so I definitely and highly recommend Axion. They give anywhere from $500 to $100,000. You know, their process is pretty simple, but they walk you through it. Of course, you have to have your documents like you would have anything else. They help with a wide range of small businesses. And they're specifically wanting to help people of color in the community who are starting businesses. And it's for startups or for people that want to continue or grow their business. And I've had a working relationship with them for the last about 6 years. And I love it. I know I can't be with them forever, but they've definitely put me on a path to help me to be able to go to the bigger money when that time comes. They have put me in their advertising, actually. Every year they ask me, so about 2 to 3 times a year, they ask me for advertising stuff they use my company, they use me, I go and speak on their behalf. So I am a loyal client. So I will always speak, you know, for them. And I always tell people about them because I think more people need to know about, you know, Axion. That's the one step of access and capital that's right there in our community.
And the other thing I want to talk through is the way in which we can be resources for each other. So Jocelyn, you mentioned the collaborations that you do or that you've done with both Louisiana Purchase and some other organizations. I know, Brandon, you've also collabed and you've done a ton of collab. We've collabed together like a lot. The other one thing that I think we forget about is that we can be resources to other people, both financially and people within our network can be. So I think there's a lot of times where we reach out to banks and things, systems and institutions that historically are inequitable, just like that. And so I think one thing that I'm starting to really think about is the way in which we can help finance each other's business. And so I've invested in my friends' companies, and I've had multiple friends say like, hey, you're doing this, like, do you need an investor? Do you need extra capital? Things like that. And I think that's a really big step forward, particularly because I think growing up as Black people, and I think a lot of people of color, or people who come from communities who have been historically disadvantaged, we think that the only answers are the big white banks or this over here, this over that, over there. And as we build up our own businesses and our own like individual portfolios, and we have friends who do the same, we forget that, you know, I have impeccable credit. I pay all my bills on time, and I still have been denied for loans for multiple reasons, right? Like there's always some kind of reason, like, oh, well, your credit score is above 800, but this over here, or X, Y, and Z, and that's very disheartening. And sometimes you feel as if like, all right, well, I can't reach my goal because this gatekeeper won't let me through, without realizing that sometimes there are ways in which we can completely get rid of these gatekeepers who do not have our best interests in mind, and leverage our own community who can support and like provide some resources. So that's like, especially because it's hard. It's hard to run a business, especially within the food and beverage industry, because like your margins are lower. Like it's a hard thing to do, and companies or banks love to be like, well, I don't know about this, like it's a risky thing, and deny you. And so I don't know. I'm thinking more about like how do I get out of this banking industry, or how do I get away from asking banks for permission and more so reaching out to my community and asking for support.
I know that's my ultimate goal.
That's so true. That's true. Oh, go ahead first.
Oh no, I was just saying that's my ultimate goal. I've always thought about that as how can we provide access to others, and I feel like I'm always keeping that in mind when as I continue to like progress in business and make more money. Is what can I do to give? And even some of my friends, it's like, hey, you're starting a business. What is it that you need? And of course, we all can't give what we like to give, but I think the mindset, Lauren, what you said is that's the direction we should start going in, so that we can help and provide. Because if you don't have those silent investors who have those relationships, if you don't have those silent partners who have those relationships and that capital, then people do get defeated if you haven't developed that relationship, with the banks. But go ahead, Chef Q.
I know, like, with the bank situation, I know back home, sad to say, but like back home, a lot of us don't have good credit. I mean, a lot of us that's coming from, like, especially in Louisiana, is a low poverty state, and I know that a lot of us, our credit shot as kids from one way or another, like our credit bad. So a lot of us don't really go through banks anyway. So a lot of us get our stuff through just like connections, through local connections, whether it be, you know, people that want to help other people that see the potential in which you want. But you as a person, you have to have all your stuff in line. You have to have your layout, your portfolio, everything what you want to do, your diagram, whatever you want to call it. If you have all your stuff in line, I mean, I've seen dudes get businesses just by going to, I hate to say it, but going to the local drug dealer and being like, hey, I want to do a clothing store. This is everything I got in line like this. What can you help me out? And a lot of times they do it, that, or athletes that come back to the city, or certain people that come back to the city and want to, help or give back. If you have all your ducks in a row, then a lot of people want to help you like that. So I know like banks really wasn't an option in New Orleans for us because we didn't have the credit at all. Like I'm talking like low. So that was our only means of really like getting snowball stands and clothing stores and restaurants and stuff like that, was to hit up other people that had it, whether it was black or white, like going to Emerald and being like, hey, Emerald, I've been a chef for 6 years. I have this idea, this business plan, let's partner in a restaurant. And him saying, yeah, let's do it, like, so I know that was always kind of like our goal. It wasn't really necessarily like hit the banks or the credit unions.
So Chef Q, I'm curious, can you give like, coming from New Orleans and then coming, to California and, having Louisiana Purchase, for whatever that you can share, what was that process like? Because you have a whole like restaurant, and I'm so like, I have a little truck and, I get intimidated just by my truck, but you have a whole establishment. And of course you have like extensive experience working in other restaurants, but now running your own. How did you do that? Especially coming in California, in San Diego, you're in the heart of North Park, which is so hard sometimes to get real estate there, especially for businesses. So can you like maybe talk a little bit about that?
Business partners. It's like I said, the same process that we have back home is the same process that I brought here, and it's business partners. And then not only business partners, it's like I said, I had a whole portfolio and a whole layout of this is the plan and this is what I want to do. And me, myself personally, like I said, like our credit been shot, so I can't go to a bank. So, how can I set these investors up and hit up different people? I know like certain people in the city that like to do stuff like that, like Marshall Falk and all these other people, they like to help out and give back and stuff like that. So it was just having a plan and then knowing exactly how I wanted to execute the plan, and then having like my whole resume, portfolio, everything down, and saying, hey, like, I helped Ruth Chris do this and this. I worked at Morton's for Landry's. I worked for Copeland's. I was a corporate chef here, a corporate chef there. I did all this stuff, and I have an idea of what I want to do and what I think would be hot, So it's having that and then coming out here and then hooking up with Pete, and it was just like, man, well, what do you really want to do? And this, I gave my whole plan out, and he was like, that's dope. Like, let's make something happen. And it was pretty much, stepping stones from there. So it's just like knowing, like I said, knowing exactly what you want to do and having your plan and having that experience behind it. It really helped out.
Did you
And
have
then
a lot of
opening,
your own capital, like your own money saved up or whatever? Did you have a little bit to
yeah,
contribute?
yeah. I mean, I had money to contribute and saved up through years of like, I was saving for a long time, and I always worked like 2 or 3 jobs, and then it was like you have to like buy pieces and buy pieces, and instead of doing that, I'm like, well, this is what I have, and let's make it happen, and it was like, well, cool, well, look, if you do this and then if you give me this amount and then you kind of lay everything out how you want it to do, then we'll put everything else into place for you and then we'll just make it happen. It's like, cool. So we did that with the first one and hopefully with the second one.
Okay. Yeah, I find that in the Black-owned brewery perspective, that tends to be the majority of the stories that are created. It's like you have like an individual with an idea is well thought out, but it's like it's getting and acquiring those other investors, those other spokesmen and sponsors to just like be in the room where decisions are made outside of your purview, and it really like spread your idea. And that really comes with like building a strong network of people in the industry that believe in you, that like that like see your idea, and like a lot of people have to put in that groundwork, really like showcase their excellence and like prove, you have to prove yourself, and it's wonderful when people do that actual work. But it's like not a lot of people realize like there's a lot of groundwork and a lot of foot traffic that you have to do when you don't necessarily have like automatic money. You have to excel. You have to be excellent. You have to like do it all.
You do, and a lot of that stems back. Like I had to start. Like I had a plan. You have to have a plan, and like my plan hit when I was 17, and I was like, well, I know if this is what you want to do, all you work in is kitchens, but like I can't execute this plan until I get to a certain role or a position of being like a corporate chef and a national trainer, and then having to open restaurants in different states and all this other kind of stuff like that, and then learning the whole thing about it, because ain't nobody going to believe in your plan if you don't know nothing about what you're doing. You can't be like a dishwasher or a line cook and go to somebody and say, hey, I want to open a restaurant. They'll just be like, all right.
But how do we include more people into this? Because I hear a lot. What I heard was like, okay, you have to do the work, and that's non-negotiable. Like we all agree, you got to do the work, and it's hard work, and especially when you don't come from money, when you don't come from access, and unfortunately racism exists. Sometimes you got to work hard. Mm-hmm. Not sometimes, all the time. You just got to work harder. So we're there. But I think a lot of it is also the idea of access is limited, right? Because access isn't universal. Everyone doesn't get access. And a lot of times people that look like us don't get access, and not because we're not gifted, not because we don't do the work. It's the racism that gets it, or the idea that you just don't fit in, like you're not a part of it. And so I
can speak on that.
Yeah, how do we open more doors? And I say we because like I think I have a ton to learn in this, and like how do I leverage what I built to open more doors? How do I just create more opportunities, and how can we all create more opportunities? Because like I've been given a lot of access, and I think the more access you get, the more access you get, if that makes sense. Like, because people know I went to Columbia University, now I have more access, and not because I'm a better human because I went to Columbia, but just because I went to Columbia, now I have access. But everyone can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could tell you, just being actually in craft beer industry, because I work as a beer tender at a Second Chance Brewery. Actually getting a job at a brewery was one of the hardest things I had to do. And this is with my engineering degree, in which I work full time, like salary, like been around the world, work on like like communication system. But I couldn't get a job in craft beer until I reached out to somebody that I had already been starting to develop like actual like friendship and access, or like just actual conversations just outside of beer. And that was kind of crazy to me. That was like, it wasn't until I actually found like someone that I developed a relationship, and they just happened to be like, oh yeah, we're hiring right now. And I just hit them up in the DM, said, can we talk about this? Next thing you know, interview. I was the top candidate out of the like 4 other people, yet I had never worked in beer. But like I know my way around. I'm like, at that time I was very knowledgeable. I'm more knowledgeable now, but like it was just wild that I spent about a year and a half applying to different places, no callback, and then I'm a top candidate because of what? Oh, okay.
I think that goes back to finding people. So like I always go back to when I started my truck. I'm like, who has a smoothie truck, right? Like, who are the Black people that have smoothie truck? And it's a young man, you know, and I think he started in Alabama, and I follow him in his smoothie truck. He's like in Atlanta now. He has locations, etc. So like every time I research, every time I'm Googling, he's the only person that just kept coming up. And I'm like, there's nobody in the West Coast, there's nobody in Cali. Like, I found a few that weren't Black owned, you know? So it goes back to finding the people in your industry. And I laugh because I told Chef Q, like, I was thinking about him the other night, and I'm like, oh, I have some questions. Like, there's some things I want to do next. Like, who can I, you know, talk to? And I think it just goes back to not being afraid, right? Because there may be every few people that may not want to give your information. I'll give you an example. There's a Black owned company. I played around with popsicles, you know, for this year. And I found it difficult, you know, to keep the consistency. What company can I go to? Who can I reach out to say, hey, I see you do this. I see them in your stores, you know, X, Y, and Z. And there's a company, I hit them up on Instagram, like, my messages will be seen. They'll give me like, oh, best of luck to you, you know, whatever. So there may be some people that may not give you the information, or maybe they're too busy, and they're on the other side of the world. So I thought maybe if I asked them, you know, how they did their operation, how they got their popsicles manufactured, they could help me. And I, you know, reached a dead end. That didn't stop me. But I say that to say that there may be 1 or 2 people that may be too busy to answer your question, or may not want to give you their information, but there are going to be other people that want to help you. And so you have to find people that are doing it, right? So I met, you know, Chef Q from his marketing that he does, you know, with Louisiana Purchase and online. And during the pandemic, you know, for my truck last year, it took off because of all these events in San Diego. I was in LA and San Diego. All that took a halt during the pandemic. And so I told myself, you know, I didn't want to chase the money. I didn't want to overwork myself. But I'm like, there are other people that I can partner with, right? Instead of trying to drive around San Diego to find a pop-up location, why am I not finding out my drinks can be paired with any type of food, right? Mm-hmm. And because right now we're in a state of, you know, Black owned, Black support, whether they look like us or not, I went into it and says, you know, who is in my city right now, Black owned eateries that I can pull the truck up to? There's no competition, there's no nothing, because, you know, their people want to see, you know, my drinks want to see their people, and it worked so perfectly. And now I'm like, well, I'm just going to hit every, you know, company that I can. But I say all that to say, it goes back to asking the questions. I wasn't afraid to hit up the chef. I wasn't afraid to hit up the other Black owners and say, hey, what do you guys think about, you know, me bringing my truck? And every person that I've reached out to saying, hey, come anytime, come every month, when you're coming back, you know what I mean? And those are the things that we need. And so anybody that's in indie industry and you feel discouraged, or you feel like, I don't know if there's anybody I can talk to, just find someone to get that access. Sometimes you just have to find the people in that industry and keep asking. Like I said, I go back to popsicles. I thought that one Black owned popsicle company was going to answer my questions and give me some direction, and they left me on read. You know what I mean? And so that's not the end of my popsicle journey, of course, but that just goes to show that you have to not be afraid to ask. And if you want access, you have to ask.
I love your popsicle journey, Jocelyn. I just love it.
I'm not done with these popsicles. I'm going to get these popsicles packaged in the store somehow, some way, okay?
Most definitely, man. You gotta
serious.
ask questions, man. You have to ask questions.
Yeah.
And even with the whole competition thing with the popsicle. I mean, there's people that, sad to say, there's businesses like that everywhere. They're gonna be like, oh man, I ain't gonna help them out, man. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? Like I get people all the time to ask me questions about everything, like, oh, how you do your fried crab? I'm gonna let you know, like, what's the point of keeping it? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how you do this, how you do that, man? Go ahead and do it. Like, I feel like that, like there's 7 days in a week, 365 days in a year. It's like if you think helping another business out is going to take all your money away, then something wrong with you, you know? So like, why not?
And I think that's important in San Diego. And we have this conversation a lot, you know, on Facebook and stuff, because, you know, when you go down south, there's so many Black owned eateries that are next door to each other, this and that. And in California, especially in San Diego, they're so far in between. So it feels like a competition. It feels like, well, I don't want to say this because they may open something up. But it's like, you know, California, we lead a lot, but at the end of the day, we're also behind. You know what I mean? And so I think we need to have to play catch up. And sometimes you have to go to other cities to see, like, oh, we're going to New Orleans. You go, no, that's every block. Like, what do you mean? If I go to a pizza place, if I go to a burger place, if I go to a daiquiri place, you know, anywhere you go, you see that. And so I think especially in San Diego and especially California, we have to ask, and we have to be okay with, you know, doing the work, but asking, because we don't ask and we're afraid to ask, because if we ask, they may not want us to open up a burger joint too. You know what I mean? But if you go to Atlanta, there's 10 burger joints around the corner. There's 50 wing spots. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's 1,000 strip clubs. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, we can't be afraid to, you know, to be in a community. And I think we have to go back to community, right?
I love, like, I think that's it. That is it. Like, the community aspect, because like you said, I 100% agree. I was asking, I thought I was going to start like this food tour business. Like, I just had all the ideas. And I was like, who does food tours? And I found like a bunch of random people. And I was just like, hey, can you tell me about this? And like you said, 2 of them left me on red, but like 3 gave me all of this advice. And they were like, call me back when you need some more help. And it really reinforced the idea of like, closed mouths don't get fed. And I think particularly within our community, and sometimes we feel as if we cannot ask because we don't think someone's going to give us the answer. Or like, I think sometimes we don't know that it's okay to, like, I genuinely, there are so many things that I learn every day that I didn't know happened, because I was just like, oh, wow. Like, I didn't realize that's how people got work done. Or I didn't realize this is what happened, because I just didn't come from that background or that community where I saw like business deals happening, or I saw those things. So I didn't realize that, like, oh, that's how that happened. Okay, I get it now. And so for me, one of the things I want to increase is like exposure and access. Like to Chef Q's point, or both Jocelyn and Chef Q both talked about working with young kids who are in like the restaurant programs, to bring them on. And I think that's hugely important. And then the work that I'm particularly interested in, like younger populations and aging populations, but helping particularly for the younger populations, like to understand that, like increase their access and exposure. Because sometimes you just don't know. Like, you don't know that that's an okay question to ask. You don't know that you should be asking questions. I think sometimes we feel as if we don't belong in the room. And so once we get in that room, we don't want to disrupt, or we don't want to do too much, because we were like, oh, I'm just happy to be here. And I think it's important to like bring people into the room and also let them know, like, you can ask questions in this room. You can you can be yourself in this space. Like, you don't have to code switch to exist here. This is how, like, you can exist, you can ask questions, you can learn, and you can grow. And I think the other part of that is, it's great to have these feeder programs, or these like programs that help people of color, right? Because Kitchens for Good or things like that, they're designed to support people that need the opportunity. However, I think it's important to look at like who is running those programs, right? Because there are a lot of programs that are designed to give access or give resources that don't come from people who are truly accomplices in the anti-racist or equity fight. Like, they just don't. And I'm not going to get on my like soapbox about like what happened here and who did what.
Right.
Because that's a whole nother conversation. But I do think
But I know one thing I tell people, man, but like when I did talk to Kitchens for Good, the number one thing I told them, man, don't be scared to politic with nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be scared of don't be scared to go in a meeting full of white folks and tell them exactly what you want. Like don't have no fear in your heart. Like know exactly what you want, know exactly what you want to do. You can't be scared to speak up in politic and talk about things. Like, you can't have that fear, especially as a Black man or woman. You can't have that fear at all because they smell it. You have to be strong, head high.
Definitely. Just from my experiences, like I grew up in Marietta, Georgia, in a very like mixed suburban area. Then went to Howard and got like ultra Black. But every summer I would be reminded that like the world is still like Caucasian everywhere else you go, and that you just have to walk into that situation and be able to like network and navigate any type of like boardroom, like kitchen, like dining table. It's like you will not realize how many like business deals are done in front of you in the randomest situations. Like your pitch deck can literally turn into a 5-minute conversation over cocktails at a random event. Like all this, like your full hour little pitch deck turned into like 5 minutes, sell it or no. And this person would be like, here you go. And you have to be able to like navigate that and not be fearful of that, and just be able to like walk into the room and everybody just looked at you like, who that motherfucker? Yeah, well, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, no, that's like you have to be ready for it at any point and just like proud of what you've accomplished and what you can do. And like teach everybody that, let them know that they're successful and they're going to continue to be successful if they stay on top of their craft.
I love that. And I love that each of you are so wildly inspiring. Like, I genuinely am always like, man, Jocelyn is so dope. Like, and I just be
you
like,
always say that. I appreciate it.
So true. It is so true. I have such a crush on you. And like the very, like, I mean, you are like just the epitome of like hard work and dedication. And I admire every single person on this panel. Because like it literally in the midst of against all odds, you all are literally doing the damn thing. Like you literally like dope ass restaurant in North Park with this Black male head chef with locks down his back, unapologetically yourself. Like that's huge in a city. That is huge.
You always gotta be yourself, and I give credit to New Orleans. I mean, they teach you how to. I mean, everybody is their self. You know, I gotta give credit to them. Like we carry ourselves how we carry ourselves. You know, for better or worse. You know, and so it's just like we don't try to change anything or try to make people. You know what I'm saying? There's been places I went to where they told me how to cut my hair. I was, nah, I'm not doing it. So, I mean, nah. So it's just like we handle everything how we want to handle everything. We bring the table to us instead of bringing it to them. So
love that. And Brandon in the craft beer industry, like Brandon has been trying to get me to drink beer for years at this point. And I'm like, no.
I'm trying to learn more about it actually, because I always be like, you know, my white friends, and one of them's on here, you know, she's heavy, you know, they're beer drinkers, you know, and I always associated beer with that race, you know, for whatever ignorance that is, but that's just not knowing, you know what I mean? And so I find that I have been put on to beers from my friends who are white. It said Black is Beautiful, which I supported that beer with one of the local breweries that was raising money for the nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
So I really admire, you know what I mean, you, because I don't even know many Black men or women in the craft industry in San Diego. I mean, they're big on beer. I didn't know that growing up. I knew that as an adult. So I would just love to learn more about it, just to know, because there's like a science to beer that I'm learning and I hear about, and it's like, I'm very ignorant, you know, to that, because in our community, we don't really drink beer. If we do, it's like, you know, Heineken's, Coronas, you know, Bud Lights, whatever, you know? And so there's a plethora, and it's like a whole like exquisite palette for beer. And so I just commend you for being in that industry. And I definitely want to, diversify your palette. Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested to talk further about that. For sure.
Definitely. Yeah, there are a few of us like really in industry and making like moves, and we actually do have one Black-owned brewery down in Chula Vista currently. So like we're out here. Then there's like wine. There's Black-owned wine shops around, and then winery up in I believe Temecula.
Mm-hmm. It is.
We're out here.
Well, quick time check. It is now 4:01. Time flew. Great conversation. Before we hop off, I do want to I want to let the audience know where they can all find you. So let's start off with Jocelyn. How can people find you or The Right Juice?
Yeah, so The Right Juice Truck, our Instagram is at The Right Juice Truck, and that's WRITE. I post the schedule every Sunday. Right now, we're on Euclid and Federal every Friday next to Union Bank from 10 to 3. And then on Saturdays, we rotate different companies, Black-owned eateries. Actually, this Saturday, the 19th, we'll be at Louisiana Purchase from 11 to 4. So we'll be back there. And Chef Q, last time we went, it was a success. It was great. He even has a special menu. If you order from the truck, you can also order and sit down. So we'll be there this coming Saturday from 11 to 4, and we'll hop around to different locations on Saturdays. But yeah, that's where you can find us, and we post the schedule, and follow us on Instagram.
Yeah.
Nice.
Chef Q, you might as well go on next.
I'll go next. All right. So Louisiana Purchase, 2305 University in Louisiana in North Park. We're open Wednesday through Sunday from 3 to 9. Also 12 to 9 on Saturdays and Sundays. Also, on a side note, I want to, because like I said, it's all about helping each other out and everything like that. Bad Boys of Culinary, that was the whole point of that. With Chef Kelson, Chef Josh, Chef Jason, Chef Pete, and myself with some others. We did Bad Boys of Culinary 2 in Carlsbad. We had over, I want to say, 18 different chefs, which was crazy, from all over San Diego and some from Los Angeles. So, Bad Boys of Culinary, we got another event in LA coming soon, and we're doing a couple of little things here and there. So, just look out for all that. It's a culinary movement. So.
Cool. I'll take that. I'll take it from here. Close out. Brandon Montgomery. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Black Beer Travelers. If you want to learn more about beer in person, most Saturdays I work at Second Chance Beer Co. in North Park, right there off of 30th and I think Lincoln. Other than that, I do pop-up events with different breweries, whether in San Diego or across the U.S. Since we're not really traveling international right now. But I really like to showcase craft beer, Black brewery ownership, and the diversity within craft. And I'm here to help you diversify your palate so you can learn more about the things that you like, maybe find that beer for you or that craft spirit or that wine.
Awesome. Thank you. And my name is Lauren Cobbs. I don't know why my voice got so high at the end. That was weird. But I run SD Melanin. We're an organization committed to curating experiences for Black and Brown professionals. You can find us on pretty much any platform except for Twitter. We don't be tweeting. We don't tweet. But you can find us at SD Melanin. And I also am the founder of a marketing and branding and communications strategy agency called Crate, CRAT, Crate Agency. You can also find us on social media and LinkedIn at Crate Agency, or crateagency.com. So shout out to the panelists. Thank y'all for being inspiring individuals, having all the words of inspiration, and just being all out dope. Thank you. Thank you for dedicating your Saturday, spending some of your Saturday morning with us. Thank you to everyone who came, checked in. We really appreciate you all. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
See y'all.
Bye.